of chess played between Bobby Fischer and an opponent with the last name Myagmarsuren. And this game of chess happened in 1967 in Tunisia. Fischer's playing white and his opponent's playing black. Fischer plays e4. I think this is a good attacking game. That's why I'm going through it. e6, d3. The point of this move is to set up the King's Indian attack, which is a system where the bishop gets put on this diagonal right here. And the move d3 is not that bad as far as blocking in the bishop, because the bishop's going to come out another way. d5, d2. That defends the pawn. So, for example, if knight f3 captures, and a queen trade could happen. White doesn't want that. f6, g3, c5. This is pretty common. Bishop g2, knight c6, knight g to f3. Both sides are just developing their pieces. Bishop to e7, castles, castles, and now pawn to e5. Now this is a good move because it gains space and creates the potential for an attack on the king side. Because if you divide the board in two and you look at the king side, it's really the space on the king side that white is gaining. So now knight to d7, and now the pawn is attacked twice and only defended once, so Fischer plays rook d1, pawn to b5. Now this game is kind of like a race, because white is trying to attack on the king side and black is trying to develop an attack on the queen side. Now white is attacking for the king and black is attacking to win some pawns or a piece or something like that. And it's much harder to understand an attack on the queen side than an attack on the king side. But we'll see by the end of the game that what black is doing by gaining all this space with these three pawns here is actually pretty. It would have been pretty effective. Well, Fischer's attack ends up being successful though. Okay, now knight to f1. Now you can see like black's maneuvering their pieces kind of more towards the queen side, white's maneuvering their pieces towards the king side. The point of this move is to get the bishop to prepare to come out, and also we'll see h4 happens and the knight often comes there in this system. So b4, gaining more space. And in closed positions you have time to do things like this, and you don't have to worry about things happening, because by closed position I mean the pawns are locked, there's no open files. In closed positions there's often not as many tactics, so you don't have to play as quickly and dynamically, and you can take your time and maneuver your pieces a little slower. So after b4, Fischer plays h4. That's a really common move. It's kind of like preparing the way. This knight can come here. This also defends the g5 square. a5. Now bishop to f4. Now this pawn is really important here because it provides the advantage of space on the king side for white. So Fischer is over defending it because it's such an important pawn. And you know, the queen might come there and it's possible this pawn's going to be attacked. Also, this gets some connection between the rooks. Pawn to a4. Now this is a key position, and I really like this move right here because it prevents a lot of activity on the queen side for black. Pawn to a3. Now, like, even some chess masters in this position might be focusing on the king side and just ignore this move a4, but I really like this because it makes it a little harder to attack. Let's see what would happen if this was ignored. Let's say he played knight to a3, and this pawn we're allowed to come here. This is going to be pretty tough here, because let's say this knight comes here and the rook comes here, and they push the pawn. There's going to be a lot of counterplay. Like the pawn might capture there. After captures, you know, like, let's just kind of say that white does nothing, right? And something like this. We can see in a position like this. This is not a real position, but because white is playing horrible moves. But you can just kind of see, you know, something like knight c5 attacks the pawn. Black is got these nice pawns here, and it's not pretty for white. So Fischer plays a3 just to avoid something like that, I think. Now pawn takes a3, pawn takes a3, and notice how, okay, two of the pawns got traded here, but it's a little harder for black to attack. There's not as much of a pawn structure to attack. Now knight to a5. Now you can imagine maybe something like c4 is coming. We'll see what happens. Now Fischer goes knight to e3. Maybe this knight's coming here. Bishop to a6. Bishop to h3. Now, one reason we can see why this bishop on f4 is important is it keeps e5 defended well. If this knight were still back here, and this knight had blocked it, it would be more of a target. But the point of bishop h3 is it attacks. It's putting pressure on the e6 pawn. So pawn to d4, knight to f1, knight to b6, and now knight to g5. Just maneuvering towards the... Oh, I'm sorry. Knight to b6. Yeah, that knight c6 would not be as good. Now knight b6 is possibly preparing pawn to c4, or the knight coming to d5. So now after knight g5, knight to d5 is played. The bishop comes back to d2. This is a really important attacking bishop because it controls a lot. It can control a lot of important squares on the board. And generally, you don't want to trade your bishops for knights if you can get a good, because you can get a lot of activity from your bishops. They don't really teach that until the more advanced levels, but there's no reason not to learn it early, that generally your bishops are a little better than your knights. Like grandmaster players it's rarely do they give up a bishop for a knight unless they're getting some type of advantage out of it. Okay, bishop takes g5. Bishop takes g5. Now I think that bishop was traded because this knight was looking pretty strong, and the queen was coming to h5. Queen to d7. Queen to h5. Bringing the queen over to attack. Now this move, it doesn't threaten anything immediately, but it's just a good move because it just brings the queen over and puts it in an active position. Because sometimes you don't know what you want to do, just put your pieces on good squares, and sometimes good moves will find themselves if you do that. This is a key move, queen h5. Okay, this is the end of part 1. We'll go to part 2 for the rest of the game. So queen h5 was just played, and black plays rook f to c8. Getting ready to push the pawn. Maybe they're thinking, oh, they can use this rook for the b file, so they want to use this rook. Knight comes to d2. Knight c3. And now bishop to f6. Now this move is really good because, well, it creates a threat. Let's see what happens if the bishop gets captured. In the game, queen e8 was played, but let's see. If pawn takes bishop, I think pawn takes pawn, and now the threat right now immediately is to go queen g5 check, and the king would move over, then queen would come to g7 check, and the king would move over again, and the queen would come here checkmate. So let's just say this was ignored. I'll just show it to you. Okay, so how can this be defended against? Possibly the queen can come here, because now after queen g5 check, king f8, king here, if the queen tries to come here check, the king escapes. But we have to keep in mind, let's see. This looks pretty devastating. I haven't found the checkmate yet, but it's certainly coming. A move like queen h6 can be met with this. Check here. It's unclear, but let's see. Check here. I think bishop takes e6, pawn takes, rook takes, and now the threat is checkmate. So what can be played? Let's say rook c7. I mean, what if they just double their rooks and then queen h6 check? This is pretty devastating. I mean, I'm not sure if Fischer calculated checkmate here, but instinctively he knew he would get a great attacking game. And the fact that this bishop was not accepted means it's pretty devastating. So after queen e8, Fischer plays knight to e4. And now, if this knight gets in the attack, it's going to be pretty devastating. So that's kind of what happened. So pawn to g6, queen to g5, knight takes e4, rook takes e4. If at any point you want to pause this just to analyze the game, that would be a great idea, because I know I go through it kind of fast. So pawn to c4, and now finally getting the counterattack. And white plays h5. So now you can see the point of that h move, the h pawn move. C takes d3. White is sacrificing this pawn right here and trying to get an attack. Rook h4, just ignoring everything. Rook to a7. This move defends. So if pawn takes here, and this rook defends this. Whereas, let's say that move was not played, we can see, let's say this move was played, you can see a possible combination in something like this. Check, here, checkmate. So that's one possibility. So that was what was being defended against, I think. And in this position, rook a7 allows for after captures, 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 rook takes h7, rook takes h7. So it's kind of an odd looking move, but it defends pretty well. Okay, bishop to g2. This is the most brilliant move of the game. That's one reason I want to put this game up, was because it just it seems like such a weird way to finish the game with just bishop from h3 to g2, but this is actually threatening checkmate. So now black plays pawn takes c2. Now, if you want, pause the video and try to figure out where the checkmate is. But don't worry about it if you can't find it. This is just a cool game of chess, and that's why we're going through it. It's in 2 moves, or 3 moves or so. So queen h6, queen to f8, stopping the checkmate. Queen takes h7 check, king takes h7, pawn takes g6 check, king takes, bishop to e4 checkmate. So just this little move right here threatened to sacrifice the queen, and you can see all the squares are blocked off. The king has nowhere to go, and that was the end of the game. In this position, after queen takes h7 check, black resigned because black saw the game was over. But you can see that Fischer sacrificed 2 pawns, and if black had one more move, it might have been game over for white, because this pawn's coming here and getting the queen, and it doesn't look too good. But what I've shown a lot of games that have a lot of sacrifices, and the best games of chess, you end up sacrificing every single piece you have except for the ones that you get checkmate. Like the last game I showed, the Immortal game, that was a great game because the only pieces left were the ones that got checkmate. In this position, it was only two pawns and a queen, but it was still a pretty good game of chess. That's just a little bit of chess humor. Yeah, I'm gonna post more Fischer's games because these are pretty good games of chess. And now let's see if we could go through the game real quick. I just like to look at it in its completion, kind of just to see what the biggest mistakes. Sorry, castles. The biggest mistakes were. Oh, it looks like we have a bit of a glitch. Okay, I think we're just to point out knight a5, knight e3, bishop a6, bishop h3. It looks pretty equal here still. I think it still looks like white's holding themselves. Knight to b6, knight to g5. See, the tough thing is it's hard to point out where exactly did the mistake happen. But possibly I think that maybe c4 should have been tried a little earlier. I think that, and just captured and just try to go even quicker with the counterplay. That's probably my only suggestion. But so we'll just go through the rest real quick, and that'll be the end of it. So bishop g2, d takes queen h6, queen f8, queen takes h7 check, and black resigns.